This week's Torah portion is called Naso, and it begins, Naso et Rosh Bnei Gershon, to take a census of the children of Gershon, which was one of the Levite tribes. And while the name indicates to take a census, to count, it literally means to lift up, nisa, to lift up. And this stresses the point that when we learn Torah, it actually elevates our physical existence to a higher plane. When we study Torah, we don't just become educated or more knowledgeable, but our physical being becomes infused and strengthened and uplifted by the spirituality of the Torah. This week's portion continues a theme from last week's portion of delineating various duties of the Levite families and their obligation to take care of certain parts of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the temple that was with them in the desert. And we find something very interesting. Last week, we discussed the family of Kehat, and this week we discuss the families of Gershon and Merari. Now, Gershon was the firstborn, and the Torah usually gives precedence to the firstborn. However, the Torah mentions the family of Kehat first. It mentioned it last week. The reason it did that, as the Midrash tells us, is because the descendants of the family of Kehat carried the ark, which was where the Torah was placed. They were carrying the stuff that's in the Holy of Holies. They were carrying the most important vessels in the Mishkan. Now, to serve God, we must both turn away from evil and do good. But the obvious question arises, which of these steps is the most important? Which one should we do first? What's prioritized over here? So the sequence of the families mentioned in the Torah gives us a clue as to how to answer this question. Gershon is related to the Hebrew word garush, which means to divorce, to separate. Right? So this indicates the idea of divorcing yourself, separating from evil. Kahat is an archaic word for gathering. As we see in Genesis 49:10, it says, Yikhat, you will gather the people, which alludes to the idea of gathering, of accumulating good deeds, which is the idea of doing good. Now, Gershon was the firstborn. So that seems to indicate that at the outset, you should begin serving God by turning away from evil. Stop doing things that are bad. And that is to cleanse yourself from the negative traits in order to then begin sanctifying yourself properly through good deeds. However, what does the Torah do? The Torah inverts it. It places the descendants of Kehat before the descendants of Gershon to indicate that ultimately doing good is the ultimate goal, which actively brings a person close to God and makes the world a home for godliness. So don't wait until you feel that you are completely cleansed of all your negativity before you can start doing good things. No. Start doing good now. Shabbat Shalom.